Greetings everyone, welcome to Advance. This game is from Norway Chess 2024. With the white pieces we have Pragg, and with the black pieces we have Fabiano Caruana. So this game is going to be one epic game up because this is a match between world number 3 and world number 4. So let's see how they do it. Here Pragg is with the white pieces. Pragg has had a phenomenal tournament in Norway Chess 2024. He was able to beat Magnus. He was able to also get a win against Hikaru. Now he's targeting the world number 3. He's beating the world number 4, world number 2, and now there is world number 3. So this is going to be one epic matchup. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Pragg starts with d4. We have knight to f6, c4, e6, and knight to f3. We have d5 now, immediately going for the queen's gambit decline, and here just g3, bishop to e7, and bishop to g2. Now this is, we are transposing into the cat line opening. This is the closed system. Castles, d captures, queen to a4, and here just a6, preparing b5. Queen caps on c4, b5 now immediately, and now just going for this queen to c2. We have bishop to b7, bishop to f4, and now just going for knight to c6, just developing those pieces. Knight bd2, knight caps on d4, knight captures, here first bishop captures, and now in this position just knight caps on e6. Very beautifully just taking a swift pawn. In this position, if you're thinking that maybe you can just get the bishop back and try and attack the queen, it doesn't work that way, because here just knight caps on e4, because you're thinking that, I'm attacking your queen, you can just capture here. But that's not that's not something that's going to be allowed here. Just knight captures on e4, and after f captures, now you go for this rook a to d1, attacking the queen. Knight to d5. The thing is that I get swift development where you get absolutely nothing. Your king side is ruined, your queen is under attack. I can just get the knight here, I can just push the pawn, and there are many ideas that I can play in the position, which is not going to be good for you. So here after knight caps on e6, we have f captures by Fabi, but here just king caps on g2. Knight to d5, now just going for the same line, attacking the bishop, but just bishop to e5, centralizing the piece. Here just c5, knight to f3, and queen to e8. So definitely the rook is going to be jumping in, so Fabi just pre-moves it to e8, and here in this position rook a to d1, queen to h5, and now finally just queen to e4, centralizing all the pieces. Rook a to d8, a4 now, and here just queen to f5. We have queen captures, e captures, a captures, and going for a captures, and just rook to a1, rook a to d8, and rook f to d1. So where do you move the knight? Here just knight to f6 was played. Just going with the knight back, we have b3 now, because those two pass pawns, even one of them becomes a pass pawn, it's going to be a nuisance. Yes, you have 4 to 3 advantage towards the king side, but it's most likely that Fabi will be pushing his pawn more so than Pragg will be. So end game wise, Fabi maybe just a little bit better, but still I think Pragg can hold this. So here just knight to e4, now just comes rook to d7, attacking the bishop. Bishop moves, and now you have to trade. So bishop captures, knight captures, rook captures on d8, rook captures, and now finally just targeting one of those pawns, just going for this rook to c7. We have knight to e4, now just knight to e5, and here rook to e8, attacking the knight. Knight to d3, knight to d2, and it's like Pragg is trying to get Fabi to the end game where he thinks he has more chance than in the middle game, because he has traded all the pieces, and this is mostly if you think about it, is a drawn end game. But still Pragg thinks that he has chances, so he must be thinking about something. Here just rook caps on c5 by Pragg, knight caps on b3, but finally going for rook captures on f5. You could also go for rook caps on b5, but the thing is that knight to d4 comes, you're just defending everything. But most likely here rook to d5 would be played. Once the knight captures on e2, you just capture this, and still the game is looking very much draw, even though black is down a pawn basically, but still. And here after knight captures, so rook captures was played, but now just comes this knight to d4. We have rook to d5, rook caps on e2, and just rook caps on b5. So basically the same thing. Instead of f5 pawn, now you're just grabbing the b5 pawn. Here just knight to c3, rook to b7, and knight to d5 was played, but now just comes this rook to d7, attacking the knight. Knight moves, here rook to a7, king to f8, and king to f3. So this is going to be a long game, but just bear with me. I'm just going to try and make it as swift and as smooth as possible. Here just rook to e7 was played, now just a rook captures, king captures, and now you must be thinking, how can Pragg converts 3 against 2 against a knight? Because you can always sacrifice the knight at the end of the line, and maybe you'll be able to hold out for a draw. Well, that is the case for most part, but unfortunately it did not bail out in this scene, because here knight to c5 was played by Pragg, king to s7, king to f4, and just knight to d5 check, king to e5. Pragg gets his king active. That's what you want to do in the end games. Just get your king active as much as possible, get your pieces to the right squares. That's all about that. Here just knight to e7, h4 now. And the thing is that in this position, if you want to go for a draw, you could, but you could also go for a line with that 6 here in this position. And here after this knight to e6, you play knight to c6 check, king moves, and here after knight to a5, just trying to go to the other side of the board, maybe give a check, maybe try to grab these pawns. But the thing is that I can also play this knight captures on g7, right? It's a great line if you want to go for a draw. King captures, here just king to e5, you play knight to c4 check, king to e4 h5, knight to f3, knight to d6 check, king to e5, not to knight to c4 check. I just go and I just trade the last pawn as well, and most likely this game would still end in a draw. And only one, who's going to try and push, obviously these players are top level grandmasters, they're not going to make that mistake, but still only person who's going to try and push is going to be the pawn with the white pieces. But here after h4, we have knight to c6 check, and now just going for king to e4, h6, and g4. Pragg is definitely not wanting a draw. He wants a win. And in this position, just knight to e7, knight to d3, now king to f6, knight to f4, and now finally going for g5. And here just hg, king g, and just f3 was played, just defending that pawn, and now just comes knight to c6. So how do you make progress in this? The thing is that you do have a passed f pawn, so maybe Pragg can do something about it, but let's see what he has in mind. Knight to e6 check was played, just moving the king out of the way, king to f6, and just knight to d4. Now just comes knight to e5, king to f4, and knight to d3 check, king moves. Now here knight to e5, king to f4, knight to d3 check. Maybe he's ready for a draw, but not really. Here king to g3. Now knight to e1, f4, knight to d3, and here just knight to f3 was played. And now how do you even make progress? It's very difficult. Maybe you can get the king here, but still, I mean, anyways, the king can move back. You'll also be hanging this pawn, so you don't want to do that. I mean, it's a very delicate position, and you have to be careful. Knight to b4 was played now, and you can go here, but here just knight to d2, remaneuvering the knight, maybe just targeting this check, moving the king out of the way. Knight to d5, knight to e4 check, king to e6, king to f3, and here just knight to e7. Now we have knight to g3, king to d5, and finally going for this king to e3, king to e6, king to d4. Finally just taking those squares away from the black king, king to f6, king to e4, king to e6, and now just knight to e2, knight to g8. Now here just check, moving the king out of the way. And in this position, if you go for king to f7, you're absolutely fine. You have to go back. You'd never want to give your opponent's pieces chances for them to infiltrate your position. But the thing is that in this position, for you to take actually a position, you have to go back, because here after knight to f5, you play knight to f6 check, and the king would need to move back because you cannot come forward here, otherwise you just lose the pawn. So here after king to g6, now here knight to h4 would have been played, and after king to f7, your position is absolutely fine, and this is a draw. Even if you push this straight trade, and most likely I go back, and even I don't even have to go back. What I have to do is just maybe get the knight somewhere along the way where your path is met with this knight's attack, and I just have to trade the knight for a pawn, and most likely the game would end in a draw. But here after knight to d4, king to f6 was played, and king to f6 just completely blunders the game. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try and find out the only winning move in this position, which crushes world number 3 Fabiano Caruana. So have at it. So congratulations to anyone who's able to find this move. The move is knight to f5. And the thing is that now your pawn is attacked. You cannot move the knight. You cannot move the king, because if you move the king, then the king jumps in. So what do you do in this position? Here, king to e6 was played, trying to still keep those squares so that, king cannot enter the game. But just king to d4 here. And now just comes this king to f6 here. Not just knight caps on h6. And now the trouble is, you will have 2 pawns, but if you capture this here, now you have g5 check, and the trouble is after king to g6 in this position, g captures, king captures, and king to e5. This is a completely winning endgame, and that's the trouble here. So after knight caps on h6, knight to e7 was played by Fabi, but here just king to e4, king to g6, g5 now, and now just comes king to h5. This position is now completely winning here. Knight to f7, king, knight to g6, king to f5. And yes, the thing that I want to tell you about this is even the top players blunder. Every single time you'll see that even top players blunder, and this is what you have to keep in mind whenever you're facing a high rated opponent, that even top players blunder, and they will blunder once you force them into spaces they don't want to, they're uncomfortable with. They will always blunder, so you push every single time. And this game took 73 moves for Fabiano Caruana to blunder, and that's what's required. You need to grind the game to the very end. Hey, knight to e7 check was played, king to e6, knight to c6, f5, and here just knight to d4 check, king to f6, king to g4, and knight to d6 was played. But it was also on this position on just move 77 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, and Pragg got a spectacular victory in just 77 moves. Insane grind by Pragg, because now the pawn push is inevitable, so there is nothing you can do. I mean, you can try, but you most likely be getting checkmated. So Fabi knows that, and Pragg got a spectacular victory. I mean, beating all the world number 1, world number 2, and world number 3 in a single tournament. that's definitely a dream run for Pragg. That's why I've been covering Norway Chess 2024. Pragg played a spectacular event there. I mean, beating Magnus Carlsen. There was a shot as well where he was staring down on Magnus Carlsen and he was beating it. That was absolutely spectacular. So yeah, great run for Pragg. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'll be coming back with such amazing games. So stay tuned to the channel, stay updated, and I'll be able to see you guys very, very soon. Thank you very, very much for watching.